is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview. Oscar Isaac, my guest today, co-stars with Paddy Considine in a riveting new HBO film, PU-239. Based upon a short story by Ken Kalfus, PU-239 tells the story of a devoted father and husband, Paddy Considine, in post-Soviet Russia, who labors in a deteriorating nuclear plant. After being exposed to a deadly dose of radiation while trying to avert a plant disaster, he's made a scapegoat and suspended without pay. With just days to live and desperate to provide for his wife and young son, he impulsively steals a small amount of PU-239, weapons-grade plutonium, and heads to Moscow to attempt a quick sale. In Moscow, Considine's character gets caught up with an inept wannabe gangster, played by Isaac, to help him sell the dangerous goods on the black market. Oscar, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Appreciate your time. Now, I gave kind of a brief synopsis of the film, but the name of the film won't mean a lot to the average person, any more than it did for your character, actually.
Right.
What would you like people to know about this movie?
Well, I think there's so many elements that make it such a unique film. I think it's very unlike any film I've really seen in some while. The closest I can think of it is films from the 70s that weren't afraid to kind of experiment with tone and genre and all that. So it's a very sad, tragic film about this man that's trying to help his family. But then at the same time, there's this very humorous side to it when he meets this criminal, and this unlikely bond kind of buddy thing happens with the two of them. And I think that's very exciting. It's kind of Chekhovian in that way. It's got a lot of humor, and at the same time, the tragedy is just involved just in the same intensity.
You mentioned 70s movies, and I hadn't thought about it until you just said that, but of course the China Syndrome, there's a little bit of that here with the...
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What drew you to this movie? Was it the drama? Was it the politics? The buddy? The buddy?
It was honestly, it was just the script, the way it was written, and the character is just fantastic. I mean, I think it's just really full of life and really the humor. Both the director, Scott Burns, and myself, one of our favorite movies, at least for me, my favorite movie of all time is Dog Day Afternoon. Mm. And it reminded me of it in that kind of way where you have this guy who's way in over his head, but he's just trying to make it work, and you end up feeling sympathy for him, even though he's kind of a screw-up. Mm. And, I like that a lot about him.
There's actually two guys in this movie that are way in over their heads.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And that's also a great point, is that these two different characters really are mirrors of each other in different extremes. Paddy Considine's character is way in over his head by deciding to go into the black market. He's a scientist, and suddenly he's forced to do this, wheel and deal, something that he just doesn't know how to do. But he's trying to save his family. And on the other side of it, you've got my character, who is also trying to save his family, whatever his definition of family, which is, a girlfriend that's a prostitute and his son that he's not sure if it's his, but he's even that, he's trying, he's working in this new crazy anything goes Wild West of capitalism in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and now, and he's just trying to do what he can, and I think that's what's really great, is that these two guys are trying to fight for their families.
It really, I think when I was done watching it, the thing that struck me was, and I'd like to go read the short story, frankly, it's so well conceived, and the comparison and the contrast between the two characters. You've got the two men, as you say, family as each of them defines it. Paddy's got the wife and son. We don't know them until the incident occurs at the nuclear plant, but they seem to be happy and in love and all that kind of thing. And then Shiv, your character is, it defines family a whole different way.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
When the two of you come together, it's kind of like oil and water, but somehow it as it does in buddy movies, it does sort of work.
Right. Well, I think it's this need, and you don't really hear it from Shiv until the very end, where he doesn't know how else to keep Timothy, which is Paddy's character, in the car. He says, "Look, I'm doing this for my child too. This whole time you've been talking about your child and your family and what you need, but this isn't just. I'm not doing this for fun or to be cool. I'm doing this because I have a family as well." And that's a very strong motivator.
It's very interesting, me. I'm listening to your voice, and truly, and people will get this when they see the movie. There's some strong acting going on in that film, because you don't sound anything right now, anything like the character of Shiv.
Right. No. Yeah. I gave him a little higher register voice, and he of course has the. We did it all with accents. It's always a tough decision. How you're gonna give it the. An authentic feel, and either everybody does British accents, or you do. It was an international cast as well. There was British people, there's French, from all sorts of different places.
Your character has Your character has some interesting thoughts on the British and the Americans, of course.
Yes, he does. He's got very specific feelings as they concern his girlfriend. Yeah, he does. He gives her rules of who she can sleep with based on his own. Socio-political ideas of people.
And some of the best moments in the movie are the small ones. Again, it's you with the boy who you think is your son, or you and Paddy in the car, kind of connecting again through children. But you each kind of know that your life is in dire jeopardy.
Yeah.
That must be good. I mean, as an actor, that's good stuff, isn't it?
I mean, for me, those are my favorite moments as well. That one moment when they're both in the car, and he just asks if you have any pictures of your son. Well, my son, he loves to go to all the new McDonald's and try the Big Macs and see if they all taste the same. And there's just a little moment where nothing seems to be happening, but kind of everything is there. Everything is revealed about these guys with just a little bit. And I think that's really, a testament to the writing. Scott Burns, he just, I think he just has a way of creating an intense amount of empathy with humor, and with the kind of putting humor and again, very tragic elements together, in one sentence even. And it ends up being something very human and specific, and I think that's what's really one of the great things about the film.
You have some moments in the film that are fairly brutal, mostly with you on the receiving end.
Yeah.
Are those difficult to play?
They can be. Pain, usually as an actor, you're looking for the action of, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to change? And it's hard to act a state, a state of being like cold or hurt,
Right.
And so that could be challenging in its own way. But again, those are also fun because they're very physical, and you get to put the makeup and the blood on, and those are fun. The harder ones tend to be the more emotional scenes.
What was your relationship with Paddy like during this? Particularly, I mean, there's a point where you have to threaten him rather physically. How did you two, deal with that? Set that up.
It's funny because I remember the first day, I think he was very surprised. At I guess my take on the character. I think that a lot of people were because the script itself. I mean, like I said, it's fantastic, but a lot of times. An actor will kind of imagine some things, and talking with Scott, we make him very, very specific, and funny. And I think he wasn't expecting that, and so I don't know. So suddenly, I think he's been kind of quiet a lot and a little bit dark, and I'm sure in that place. And then with all that humor, he kind of really lightened up. And after a while, I mean, we were just cracking each other up, and there was a lot of scenes in those cars where, I mean, I remember one time in particular, we just couldn't get through it, and it wasn't anything even that funny. You know, we just couldn't get through it. He would always laugh, and that would start to make me laugh, or I would start to laugh, and, you know, you can't help it. It's actually a horrible feeling. And the producers had to come over and were like, guys, you really need to pull it together. And we're like, I'm sorry, but it's just so funny. So, no, it was great. I mean, he's a wacky man. He's an amazing actor, and it was great to hear his stories and to kind of just feed off of him. You know what I mean? He's a wonderful actor, and for me, it was my first film, and to be able to you know, kind of spar with him on screen was amazing.
And well, you mentioned that. I mean, this movie looks like it could be a significant launching pad for you. You know, sometimes you're sympathetic, the reluctant gangster, sometimes violent. Are you excited to get this out in front of people?
Yeah, you know, it's been almost maybe even over 2 years since we shot it.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm very, very anxious to get it out there. You know, but then again, you know, it's done, and there's not much I can do. I have no control over it or how people are going to, you know, take it. I just hope that I really do hope that they enjoy the film, because I do think the movie's really good. And like I said, it's unlike a lot of films nowadays. So I'm anxious. You know, I'm actually curious to see how people take this kind of mixture of tone. You know, you know, a lot of times films can be very straightforward. You know, this is a sad movie. You know, this is a funny movie. You know, and Scott really tries to make a full picture of life.
Do you have any concerns in taking a role like this? The Russians not exactly portrayed in the best light here. Do you have any? You know, when you take a role like this, is it a job, or do you think about, oh, you know what, someone may not be too happy with the way I'm portraying this guy, or that the movie is portraying this guy?
Well, I think that would maybe come into my mind if I felt that was happening in some, you know, real way. But, you know, I think that it's less about the Russians and more about, I mean, if anything, capitalism. You know, I mean, I think it does in a way make the argument that, you know, plutonium in the wrong hands is just as, you know, deadly as capitalism in the wrong hands. You know, and not to say that the Russians are the wrong hands, but this idea that it's unchecked, you know, it's kind of an anything goes mentality, and I think, you know, that for me, if you know the political aspects of it were that was the strongest, as opposed to, you know, Russians are, you know, are crazy, and either gangsters or even the good ones are going to sell plutonium. You know,
and that's kind of a scary notion.
Right. Well, that's what's also amazing. Again, you know, that the main sympathetic man that you feel so much empathy for is actually doing a very vile, horrible thing, which is selling plutonium on the black market to who knows for what reasons, you know? Yeah.
He knows he's going to be dead, and he doesn't seem to be thinking 5 steps, even 2 steps ahead of, well, if I'm dead and I sell this, I get the money for my family, but gee.
Yeah, what about everybody else?
Yeah.
At least my family can fly to Costa Rica, but...
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it is. It's but I think that's a very real thing, you know. I think when you're in survival mode, I mean, look at what happens. I was just watching television. You see the ivory trade and how they kill these, you know, elephants, and how, you know, all sorts of different horrible things that happen. And I think it's just because it's a mentality of survival.
Mm. Is this the first time you've had a role where you've had to answer questions that were political?
No. I mean, you know, everything nowadays feels like everything has a little bit of a political undertone. But no, you know, I did a play where I played Lorca, and Federico Garcia Lorca, and he, you know, obviously is you know, can be considered quite a political figure. Mm-hmm. You know, being killed by the Franco regime, and so there was those aspects in there, and you know, yeah, I've had some of that already.
And then you mentioned the producers. Now, 3 of the executive producers, George Clooney, Steven Soderbergh, and Peter Berg, pretty big name. Clooney known for political stands. Did these guys are they just names on the film, or was there any hands-on with these guys in your part of the film?
Well, in my part, no, not the actual filming of it. I know that Steven Soderbergh, because I did end up working with him as well on a film, and we talked a lot about it, and I know that he was integral in the editing process. And I don't know exactly what George Clooney and Peter Berg, what their roles were, but yeah.
It's interesting. I could see, thinking back on it, I could see Clooney actually in Paddy Considine's role.
Oh yeah, definitely, I could see that.
You could have been doing a buddy film with George Clooney.
That's right.
Wait, Oscar, I understand you were born in Guatemala?
Yeah.
Were you surprised to be offered a role as a Russian?
No, not really. I mean, I was born in Guatemala. I did grow up in the States. I've been here all my life, and no, I'm pretty, I guess someone would say, ethnically ambiguous. So, no, I actually wasn't. And for some reason, my father is Cuban, and actually my grandfather worked for the government, the revolution, and he actually had this slight obsession with all things Russian, all things Soviet, I should say. And I don't know if that kind of translated into my blood somehow, but I feel somewhat similar. I love my favorite playwright, Chekhov. I read it all the time. I just read Crime and Punishment again, and it's really my favorite. There's something about that soul and that voice that I don't know, and I really relate to. So actually, I kind of felt quite at home.
It wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be hard to see you go in either the direction of playing like another gangster, maybe even a more serious gangster, or going kind of and playing more in a comedy kind of a thing. What would be more comfortable for you?
I think it would just be about. I tend to read something and I look for the humor in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean I want to do some sort of broad comedy. I'm really interested in being. I don't know, it sounds somewhat pretentious, but truthful, but something that really has some sort of, Mike Nichols says that a laugh is just a really loud yes. And I think that's great. I think that the idea of that I want to do films and plays that give the audience that feeling of saying yes, that's true, that is the truth. I recognize that. And whether that's as a gangster or as a very comic role. That's fine with me.
Where did you train? Where did you learn your trade?
I went to school. I went to Juilliard.
Wow.
Yeah, I went up here in New York, Juilliard for 4 years.
That tends to open a lot of doors for people.
Yeah, it can. It can. I mean, it's a great school. I've really learned so much. It gave me a huge love and understanding of Shakespeare. And, I had a great time. I really grew a lot. It was also very difficult. It was kind of drama boot camp.
Do you remember
call it the Yard?
Any particular uncomfortable experiences from that?
I mean, there's Bob, there were so many. I did remember finally breaking down and crying when, it's tough because a lot of times, they'll kind of get into, well, you made that choice because you are this kind of person. And, it's kind of some mind games there, but it's all in the goal of becoming a better artist, and so I forgive it all. But, I mean, that's just the name of the game. It's very hard training.
What would a hazing at Juilliard be? Would they make you reenact Pauly Shore roles? How would that work?
Right, exactly. No, what was it? They had all their own little weird games they do with masks and Dionysus and Greek gods and all sorts of silly things.
Oh, so you're saying it's like a Stanley Kubrick movie?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, I
more like that than Pauly Shore.
I suspect a lot of people will be introduced to you for the first time through this movie, and they're probably going to wonder a little bit more about your background. You talked about, having kind of an ambiguous ethnic background. Are you? How old are you?
I'm 27.
Okay, so a young guy. Are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And why acting? Why not, I don't know, anything else?
It was funny. I was trying to think about that. Most people, a lot of people will say, "Well, I'm just what I've always wanted to do," and in some way that's true. But I was thinking back to what something that Dostoevsky says, and actually that Tolstoy says about the main character in Crime and Punishment. He says that life happens. The mechanism of life happens in the barely imperceptible things. It's the tiny little shifts of consciousness. So when this main character in Crime and Punishment murders these women, that's not real life. He's just acting out. He's just being a machine. The real shift happened when he was thinking about something that, something completely other, that made him kind of become this person. And so I was trying to think about that in my own regards, as far as acting is concerned. And I'm doing this Ridley Scott film right now. And I actually realized that the first time that I really started to shift my mind into this world of movies and acting was, I think, with the film Legend. I think that's the first time that I consciously remember thinking, wow, people made this. There's guys that said, I want lights here, and I want you to do this, and there's cameras, and there was one guy that this was his vision, And I think from that point on, I started seeing movies differently and grabbing video cameras and trying to emulate that, and performing in them. And I think that's one of the small shifts that happened.
And what is it you're working on now? You made reference.
It's a film called Body of Lies.
Oh.
It's Ridley Scott's next film. It's with Leo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great film.
That's definitely big time stuff.
Yeah, it's good. It's very exciting. We're shooting in Morocco. What
is your role in that?
I play the partner to Leo's character, named Bassam, and we start off the movie together and get to do some car chases, and he's a very explosive character.
Oh, and I have to ask. I didn't know you were doing this. So what's it like working with Leonardo DiCaprio?
That's great. You never know when you're kind of going into one of these situations. You're like, I hope they're not, I hope they're not jerks or whatever. but he's a really nice, really funny guy. We were joking around right off the bat, and already starting to improvise and doing different things. And he's a really, really good, solid actor, and he's a great actor, and really seems like a really great guy.
A guy like that's been around a while now. Is he a little, at first when you come on the set with someone like that, he doesn't know you. You don't know him. I'm assuming it until you meet on the set. Is it a little standoffish at first? Do you have to?
What? No. I think that's what was the most shocking. That's what I would assume. But no, he was actually incredibly humble. Was really warm. Excited to seemingly excited to meet me. It was I was honestly taken aback with the whole thing because, I kind of felt bad for even expecting otherwise. He's a really, really good guy.
And what about Ridley Scott? How is he to work with?
It's just to see an auteur, at the top of his game and still, completely passionate about it and excited about it, and also he's very much about the best idea wins. So strangely, again, there's a seemingly lack of ego. He's sure, he knows what he wants, and it's a well-oiled machine. But at one point, the sun was going down, and people running around with their heads cut off. There's like a whole group of hundreds of people at barricades trying to catch a glimpse of Leo, and Leo is frustrated about one thing or something else, and everything's just kind of going crazy, and the lights going. And I see Ridley's just kind of standing in the middle of it all, just kind of looking at it, and he looks over at me, I kind of wink at him, and he walks over, he's like, this is where I show Black Hawk Down. Oh, mate, it was awesome. I was like, so you like this, huh? It's like, he's this anarchy kind of feeds you. He's like, oh, yeah, I love it.
Oh, my goodness.
So, it's great. It's great to, it's great to be part of.
Now, you've completed another film, Gorilla?
Yeah, I that's the Soderbergh film that I shot. That's about Che Guevara.
That's
Benicio del Toro.
What is your role in that?
I play. It's 2 films, and so I'm in the second film, and I play Che Guevara's translator when he comes to the United Nations. The film's in Spanish, so that this section is in English, where I translate all the things he says, and when he goes on meet the press, I think it was called.
Yeah.
That's when Che Guevara did that. He had this actually son of a diplomat who wasn't a professional translator translating for him, and it's kind of funny because you listen to the tape, you watch the tape, and you can tell he's kind of a little bit lost, which is good because I was a little bit lost myself.
And and just another question or two, and we'll let you go here. But what would you like to do in the future? I mean, it wouldn't be hard to see you jumping into a buddy caper like a Rush Hour, but you seem to be heading into kind of more serious, from what we were just talking about, more serious roles.
I think, like I said, I like the idea of doing a quote unquote serious role, but finding the humor and the humanity and the everyman in that. I don't necessarily see myself doing a kind of broad comedy or action films or necessarily. I kind of want to do things that have something to say. Whether it be political or whether it be about the human condition, but something that that has something to say. Like those films from the 70s. You felt that they were made for a reason, not just to satisfy some sort of budgetary need or something.
Well, Oscar, thank you so much for joining us today on Mr. Media.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And folks, if you'd like to keep up with Mr. Media's Friday interviews, you can subscribe to the site via email at www.mrmedia.com. You can also subscribe to the audio feed in the podcast section of iTunes. Thanks for joining us. Please come back again next week for another Fridays with Mr. Media.